So right now, two major conflicts are just dominating the headlines: Venezuela and Ukraine. We're talking different continents, completely different histories, and wildly different justifications. But, a lot of analysts are starting to argue that they're both being driven by the exact same question, a question that really redefines what power even means in the 21st century. So here's what we're going to break down today. First, we'll look at how different methods are being used to get to very similar goals. Then, we'll compare two really distinct models of power. After that, we'll uncover the real battlefield, which you'll see is all about economics. We'll look at how the entire global system is being stress tested, and then I'm going to turn the analysis over to you. At first glance, what's happening in Venezuela and Ukraine, they couldn't look more different, right? One is presented as this kind of quick, surgical operation in the Western Hemisphere, while the other is a brutal, grinding land war in Eastern Europe. But if you look just a little bit closer, they both point to the same fundamental struggle for control. And that brings us to the real question, the one that's underneath everything. When international rules and laws start to feel more like suggestions than actual rules, well, who gets to set the terms then? Who controls the flow of oil and gas? Who dictates the value of money? And who really pulls the levers of political power? That's what's really at stake here. So, if you remember our last explainer, we talked all about the stories, the competing narratives that different world powers use to frame their actions. That was about the why. But today we're going a level deeper. We're not just looking at the stories, we're looking at the actual mechanics of power, the how. All right, so to really get how this works, we have to make a comparison that honestly a lot of people try to avoid. We're going to put the US strategy in Venezuela right next to Russia's strategy in Ukraine. Not to say they're the same, but to understand the shared logic hiding underneath. Okay, let's start with the US model, and we'll use Venezuela as our case study here. Now, according to US officials, what's happening there is not a war. It's something else entirely. And the specific language they use, well, it's absolutely critical. See, by framing its actions as law enforcement, counter-narcotics, and migration control, Washington gets to do something really clever. It can sidestep all the traditional hoops you have to jump through to declare a war. It avoids formal declarations, keeps the markets calm, and still achieves its strategic goals. Analysts have a name for this: horizontal power projection. The goal isn't to plant a flag and stay there forever. No, it's about speed, surgical strikes, and economic knockout punches. The whole point is to gain control over critical things like energy flows, get legal leverage over a country's leadership, and send a huge signal to global markets. It's all about control from a distance. Okay, now let's flip the coin and look at the Russian model in Ukraine. And right away, you can see this is a totally different beast in its execution. It is all about territory, it's military heavy, and it's openly, brutally confrontational. Russia's story is completely different. They frame their actions in Ukraine as a matter of survival, the need for a security buffer, a response to an existential threat. This narrative demands a totally different kind of action. We're talking a long-term military presence, constant pressure on infrastructure, and a strategy designed to literally exhaust the population. And this gets a different label: vertical power projection. Think about what that means. It's slower, way more expensive in terms of lives and equipment, and the main goal is to physically redraw the map and change political alliances by holding on to territory. It's control through being there, physically. And this right here, this just lays it all out, doesn't it? The US wants control without the messy business of occupation, so it uses financial and legal weapons. Russia believes occupation is the only way to guarantee control, so it relies on boots on the ground and military endurance. They're using completely different tools. But what if they're both building from the exact same blueprint? And here it is. This is the one single belief that connects both of these seemingly opposite strategies. The consensus among many analysts is that we're now in a world where power creates legitimacy, not the other way around. The old idea that you had to be seen as legitimate to have power has been completely flipped. Now it's the ability to successfully use force that makes your actions legitimate in the eyes of the world. So if raw power is the name of the game, then the real fight isn't just happening on the ground with soldiers. It's happening in the global financial system. We're talking about money, debt, and energy prices. This is the hidden wiring that connects conflicts that seem like they're worlds apart. Just look at the numbers here. The sheer pressure on the whole system is staggering. Global public debt is at an all-time high. Interest rates are stubbornly high, which makes paying off that debt incredibly painful. And maybe most important,
defense spending isn't a temporary thing anymore. It's becoming a permanent, growing line item in every major budget.
What all this pressure means is that we're basically entering a new age of economic warfare with a whole new rulebook. Wars are being paid for by printing money, which, causes inflation for everyone. Sanctions are the new tariffs, and national currencies themselves are being used as weapons. And that's why Venezuela's oil and Ukraine's gas pipelines are so important. They're not just resources, they're key pieces on this new economic battlefield. And this economic strain isn't just some background noise. It's actively creating these parallel crises all over the world. So while all the cameras are pointed at one conflict, the entire system is being stress tested in several places at once. So, stress test number 1. Ukraine is hitting a wall of pure exhaustion. And we're not just talking about ammunition here. This is a test of the economic and social breaking point of an entire country and of its allies. How long can this go on before something has to give? Meanwhile, stress test number 2, Europe is facing this massive deindustrialization pressure. Soaring energy costs and all this instability are hammering its industries. This isn't just an economic problem, it's a test of the entire European political project.
And stress test number 3, you've got Iran dealing with a collapsing currency and major protests. The thing is, these are not separate problems. Ukraine, Europe, Iran, you have to see them as symptoms of the same disease, a global system under incredible strain. Each one is like a gauge, telling us how much pressure a country can take before it starts to crack.
So this is why analysts have kind of stopped asking who's next and started asking what conditions create the risk. And they've landed on these 4. Having a resource the whole world needs, having shaky alliances, having a government whose legitimacy is questioned, and already being under a lot of economic pressure. The scary part? That combination isn't rare anymore. It's becoming the new normal.
Okay, so now that we've laid out this whole framework, I want to turn it over to you. It's your turn to be the analyst. And let's start with 3 big questions for this new reality we're in. First up, after seeing this breakdown of horizontal versus vertical power, do you really believe the US and Russia are driven by fundamentally different philosophies? Or are they just playing the same game with a different set of cards, each using the tools that work best for them to achieve the same end goal? Control. Question 2. In our interconnected world, what's the more powerful weapon? A sanction or a tank? Has economic pressure, things like sanctions, currency games, weaponizing debt, actually become more effective than just old-fashioned military force? And finally, the big one. At the end of the day, regardless of which model wins out or who's on top, do any of us, the ordinary citizens in any of these countries, actually benefit from this? Let me know what you think. If this is the kind of analysis you find valuable, think about subscribing. In episode 3, we're going to explore why the state of permanent crisis might not be an accident. It might be exactly what the system wants. Until then, stay observant and stay skeptical.